So let me briefly introduce people to you, Jourik. So Jourik Ciesielski, CTO at ELAN Languages. So very excited to have you here at SlatorCon Remote. You have a master screen translation from the KU Leuven in Belgium. So originally a linguist, and you've worked at originally at Yamagata Europe, and then you started your own company, CJ International, and today you'll be also representing LTP Crowdin here today. So today, Jourik will talk to us about beyond compliance, security and confidentiality in language technology, which is a huge topic, of course, huge topic. So let's bring your slides up as well. Maybe I need to ask Deppy to bring the slides up. Or can you share your screen? Do you have them somewhere? No, let me.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, for some reason, this is not the first slide, but we'll get there. No worries. Here we are.
Thank you. All right, I'll disappear and really looking forward to your presentation, Jourik. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Florian. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you, Slater, for having me on the program today. I really appreciate it. Thank you also to my partners at Crowdin for sending me to the conference. Equally appreciate it. Zero trust in translation, that is what I'm going to talk about today. And as already anticipated by Florian, this clearly implies that I'm going to talk about security, confidentiality, and data protection in language technology and in the translation supply chain, a very big topic as already anticipated by Florian. So I do wanna tell a little story here, and I'm going to start off quite positively, right? I'm going to start off by saying that many companies are doing many great things when it comes to security. You know, there are all kinds of measures. Think about ISO certifications. You might have one or more. ISO 27001 is a good example, which promotes the use of company-owned devices, for example. You might have all kinds of measures in place to be compliant with GDPR or similar legislation such as EPA in the US. You might have a private company network, VPN. You're probably logging into your Google Workspace or your Office 365 through 2FA, two-factor authentication. Your IT manager might ask you to change your passwords every 3 months or 6 months or whatever time frame they impose. All of that is really good. It often feels a little bit like a burden. It might feel like overkill. It might feel like paranoia, but it basically confirms that security is top of mind in everything that we do. And if you're in language services, you will recognize this too. It's very important basically in every RFI and every RFP where you participate. Now, let's take an example. We have a company, a translation buyer, a great company, LTD, for example, and they want to go global. They want to go multilingual and translate, for example, their websites. So what is the typical process that this company, great company, LTD, might go through? First of all, they might acquire or purchase a language technology platform, Crowdin, for example. They push all of their data into the system, step number one. Then they hire an MLV, a multi-language vendor, to manage the translation process of their 15, 20, 25 target languages. The MLV, in turn, might hire an SLV, a single language vendor, for certain of those target languages. And then the SLV, in turn, might hire a freelance linguist to do the actual translation. With every extra step in the supply chain, with every extra actor in the supply chain, the risk of vulnerability increases. And these poor freelance linguists, without realizing it, actually carries a massive responsibility. Now, why are freelance linguists extra vulnerable? Plenty of reasons, and you probably hear me coming. Freelancers might, for example, share their laptop with their children who play Minecraft on the same laptop and install all kinds of plugins. Freelancers might have a side hustle where they need to download all kinds of software applications, free VPN, screenshot tools, and so on and so forth. Linguists might translate from their phones, from their tablets, etc., and so on. So there's a very high exposure to risk, to security risks. What can happen on the devices of freelance linguists? They might, for example, innocently view or download videos they consider to be entertaining, which is perfectly fine. They might connect to public Wi-Fi networks from the hotel lobby, from the beach. They might fall for phishing attacks. They might reuse the same passwords everywhere. They might store that password in a local file next to this very important document they just translated for one of their top buyers, and so on and so forth. Again, the risk is extremely high in this case. So if we do a quick recap of what we have been telling so far, the key message is that if you buy translation, you're indirectly granting access and edit permissions to people you don't know, to your very sensitive information, people who don't have a clue about your security policies. Right? And now I'm going to ask a very rhetorical question. How big is this risk? This is a huge risk. Okay, so far, so good. Let's now break down how the hacking industry actually works, and I actually find this pretty interesting. So what you must know is that a lot of hackers don't really care about you. They don't care about your computer. They don't care about your information. What a lot of hackers do is just creating malware, producing bad code, and trying to spread it as widely as possible, right? Whenever they succeed, whenever they infect a device, whenever they have a victim, they retrieve all the obtained information, files, passwords, browser history, and so on and so forth, and they publish that information on the dark web. And the dark web then all of a sudden becomes this kind of brokerage where the real bad guys can look at what's available, and if they find something interesting because a big name was compromised, because a sub-processor of a big name was compromised, because they see the company that they're actually targeting, then the real bad guys might act accordingly and purchase that information and do all kinds of bad stuff with it, right? So this is how the hacking industry actually works. And this comes with two very big consequences. Number one, even though the hackers don't care about you, even though they don't care about your computer, even though they don't care about your information, even though they're not directly targeting you, you are constantly under attack. And number two, the real bad guys, the guys who are really targeting you, they can just sit and wait for you or someone within your organization or someone within your translation supply chain to make one tiny mistake, and then hell breaks loose. All right. We, as translation industry professionals, we of course cannot allow to just sit and wait to do or do nothing, right? The risk of doing nothing is too high to be acceptable. Therefore, we have to enforce security in our processes, but also in all of the technologies that we use. And if you are in language services, you all are, you know that we use many, many different tools and many different technologies. So what can be done? This is going to be a very small crash course in terms of security measures and features that can be taken in Crowdin. We have a lot, as a matter of fact, too many to cover in this presentation, in the remaining 10-15 minutes of this presentation. So I'm going to highlight a selection of very targeted, obvious, but important security measures that can be taken in our system in Crowdin. The one thing that all of our security measures have in common is that they are based on the zero trust policy. What does that mean? It means that we do not rely on promises. It means that we do not rely on agreements. We only exclusively rely on technical controls to enforce security, right? Why can't we rely on agreements? Why can't we rely on processes or promises? Number one, because people can do accidental downloads. People can fall for a phishing attack. People can forget about security policies. If you hire someone new, if you hire an intern, they might not recognize the real risk of something. And finally, like it or not, but some people are stubborn and simply refuse to do what they are told to do. Zero trust, no promises, no agreements, only technical controls. And then we can start with our crash course in terms of security measures in Crowdin. And I first want to say something about managers in Crowdin. Who are managers? Managers are power users in Crowdin, super users. They are the kind of user that have full autonomy, full control within a Crowdin instance. And our recommendation is to enforce SAML logins for Crowdin managers. I don't think I need to explain what SAML is, security assertion markup language. It basically means that you take one system, you log into one system, and then you leverage that one system as an identity provider that confirms who you are when trying to log into other systems. It doesn't send around passwords, and it does a couple of very interesting security checks. It can, for example, check whether you're logging in from a company-owned device, yes or no. So recommendation number one, for Crowdin managers, we would like you to enforce the use of SAML to log into our system. Now, this is great. This is very effective. This is very efficient, but it still doesn't solve our linguist problem, right? Linguists continue to be as vulnerable as they were a couple of slides ago. Luckily, Crowdin has a couple of very interesting features to enforce or at least improve security. We have 2FA, for example. As a matter of fact, Crowdin is configured to verify devices for all users across all versions of the product. So if you log in, you always have to verify your device via email. But if your email gets compromised, then this is not enough. We can go one step further and we can enforce 2FA via an authorization app, for example. But even that is not entirely waterproof, as hackers can be creative enough to, for example, make a clone of the Crowdin login page. And so Crowdin supports and even allows to enforce the use of biometric 2FA, two-factor authentication, which means that you combine a traditional password with something personal, such as face recognition, such as a fingerprint, such as voice recognition even. So this is our recommendation number 2 for all non-manager users in Crowdin. We recommend to enforce the use of biometric 2FA when logging into the system. All right, another one. Crowdin offers many authentication methods. We have the traditional combination of email and passwords. We have magic links. We have passkeys. You can log in through Google, Microsoft, GitHub, GitLab. You can even log in via your X account if you like. All of that is great because it offers great flexibility. But at the same time, if that X account of your freelance linguist or if the GitHub account of your developer gets compromised, then all of a sudden Crowdin becomes the backdoor to your entire localization pipeline for hackers, which is a huge danger, of course. Luckily, the supported authentication methods can be managed on a very granular level in Crowdin, and so our recommendation is to limit the available authentication methods to the ones that are most secure and the ones that are very crucial, very important for your organization based on your needs and your wishes, which can, for example, be a combination of SAML and Passkey. Hence, you reduce the potential surface of an attack. All right. This is limiting the available authentication methods. Ghost accounts. This is an interesting one, and I think it will sound familiar to everybody in the room today. So you're probably familiar with the situation where a company stops working with a freelancer, but doesn't immediately revoke the freelancer's access to the company's systems for whatever reason. Laziness in a lot of cases, right? This is a very huge risk. This is a very bad thing to do because an old account, a ghost account, can still be compromised, can still be hacked, leading to access to your system for hackers. Luckily, Crowdin has an option or even a full-fledged app that allows you to automate the deactivation of inactive user accounts. Crowdin monitors them for you, and after a certain period of inactivity, the account will automatically be suspended. Our recommendation: automate the deactivation of inactive user accounts in Crowdin. We're almost there with our very quick crash course. Something else is permission granularity, right? When creating a user account, Crowdin allows you to configure very, very precisely what the user can do, what he or she cannot do, and where he or she can do it, right? That way you can, for example, configure that your developers can never ever access your marketing content and vice versa. This is not the nicest thing to do. This entails a little bit of work, but the risk of a potential security breach is too high to be acceptable, and therefore we recommend everybody to manage permissions as granularly as possible and only grant access to the things that user A, B, or C really, really needs. Permission granularity. There we go. Offline translation. This is another pretty interesting one. We all know how freelance linguists have their preferred CAT tool, and that makes sense. That's perfectly understandable. Freelance linguists will also do whatever it takes to use their own CAT tools for the projects that they receive. Crowdin understands this. Crowdin also supports or offers an option that allows linguists to download their tasks as XLIF files, process them in their own tooling, and then upload the finalized XLIF files back to Crowdin. However, we never ever recommend people to do this. We do acknowledge that offline translation sounds safe, that it sounds secure, but it's not, right? It's absolutely not, because no one knows where those downloaded XLIF files will travel after they end up on the device of the freelance linguist. So this is a misconception. Offline translation isn't necessarily more secure than translating on a public cloud server, such as, or just like on-premise servers are not necessarily more secure than public cloud servers. As of 2025, the option to download XLIF files is disabled by default in the system. It can be enabled, but again, we encourage everyone to never ever do this. Furthermore, if you take the content out of Crowdin, you take away all the context enhancements that are available in the editor, you take away all of the collaboration features that are available in the editor, and other gems that can really help the linguist when translating content in the system. Offline translation is a no-go. And then we have another one, which is more interesting for the developers among us. API token rotation. APIs are great. APIs are wonderful. They allow you to build the most amazing automations, and they allow you to build the most challenging integrations. But API keys can be very, very easy to steal if they are not managed with due caution. I'm an engineer myself. I sometimes catch myself downloading API keys to a local file or exposing them in my code for a very quick experiment. Very, very bad practice. Therefore, Crowdin encourages developers and engineers to set a maximum lifetime to every generated API token, which means that you will be forced to update your API token after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever time frame you want to impose. Additionally, it's simply a very, very good practice to audit your existing API tokens every once in a while and delete API tokens that are not actively used. Another one, idle session timeout, which is a time frame that Crowdin will apply and log out automatically after a certain period of inactivity. We recommend everybody to set the idle session timeout to 20 minutes again, meaning that Crowdin will log out automatically, will close automatically after 20 minutes of inactivity. We do acknowledge and we do understand that this means that a freelance linguist needs to log in again after lunch. But again, I've said it multiple times already, the risk is simply too high to be acceptable. And then we reach to the conclusion of our presentation. We're doing pretty well in terms of time. That makes me very happy. This is a very quick summary of what we've discussed in the presentation today. What do we recommend? Crowdin managers enforce login through SAML. Linguists or non-managers in Crowdin enforce login via biometric 2FA. In terms of access, limit the available authentication methods to the most crucial ones, the most secure ones, enforce least privilege, manage your permissions as granularly as possible. Additionally, only grant linguists access to the content that they actually have to translate, not all the content. In terms of managing your accounts, don't allow people to sign up themselves in Crowdin. It's possible. Don't do it. And automate the deactivation of inactive accounts, audit your API tokens regularly, and be quite strict when it comes to idle session timeout configurations. That being said, I would like to thank you for your attention. It's perfectly fine to scan the QR code on the last slide. We are not hackers. It will just bring you to the Crowdin website. And I think we have still a couple of minutes for questions. Thank you very much.
I'll jump on stage. Hey, Jourik, thank you so much for great presentation. So let me just go through. We have a couple of questions here in the chat. So Abdullah was asking, what about productivity? Is it affected? I think this was meant in the context of enhanced data security and its impact on productivity. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely not. So in terms of security measures and the things you can do to enforce security, there's no direct connection to, productivity and other features in the system. So you should really look at it as an additional layer of security that you put on top of the system, but it doesn't jeopardize productivity whatsoever. So the answer to this question would be no, productivity is not affected.
All right, and then Bernhard Hull is asking, how do you handle LSI linguists to protect the IDs of their contracted freelancers from the buyers that own the TMS for cases where Crowdin instance would be owned by the buyer? And would the buyer need to hold licenses for the LSP/LSI freelancers? It's a complex question. Maybe you want to, yes, you see it in the chat, in the stage chat also. You can read it.
I can see it. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so in the case of Crowdin, let me speak for Crowdin now. In the case of Crowdin, the buyer doesn't necessarily need to hold licenses for LSPs because LSIs and their freelancers, of course, they can be invited and they can work on the content, on the projects upon invitation. And it's not necessary to buy or purchase or have a certain amount of licenses for them to work in the system. Once they are in the system, we can really apply everything that I just described in the presentation. So it's a recommendation. And again, as I mentioned, it is possible to download content. It is possible to allow someone to sign up themselves to the system, etc., and so on. But all of that can be disabled. So you really have this closed ecosystem, Crowdin, with all of these security measures in place. Everybody works within the system, and the risk of security breaches becomes almost none.
Got it. And Justin Baudin from Adapt Global, founder of Adapt Global media localization companies, asking, what's your preference, ISO or SOC 2?
That's a good question, and I'm not going to answer it. I do not have a preference. I think all of the available measures and certifications and legislation have value. I'm not an expert in that matter either, so I'm going to leave this question open. Maybe people can chime in the chat and share their preferences.
Got it. And then before we go to Esther's question, Andre is asking, translator, the money question, translators, proofreaders, LSI licenses are free and included in any plan, or what's the licensing look like?
That's Crowdin confirmation. So it's included in any plan. So no extra licenses need to be purchased for LSIs or for linguists.
And like security, obviously huge topic, but like how much of a differentiator is it in RFPs, RFIs, or is it table stakes like with everything, or like do you get extra points for particular features?
Absolutely. I think deals can be won or can be lost because of security in an RFI or in an RFP. It's always like this one big topic in every RFP where you participate. People are paranoia about it, and they should be paranoia about it, because paranoia is just good planning. So the answer to that question is, it's a huge differentiator. Make sure you have your homework done. Make sure you can reply positively to all of the requirements in the RFI. And yes, it will increase your chances of winning an RFI or an RFP.
And last question before we go to the panel, like, have you noticed anything particular with maybe past 3, 4, 5 years with AI? I don't know, like bots rolling around doing crazy stuff. Like we're just noticing on, like, for example, our like newsletter signups. I think we have to go like from double opt-in to triple opt-in. Otherwise, we have all kinds of random, people signing up to various things that we do.
Well, when it comes to AI, the paranoia is only increasing, and there I sometimes think it's paranoia. And let me explain this a little bit. Sometimes when people ask for AI services and you promote a certain service, people are fine when you say, for example, that that the server where the model is hosted is located in Europe. Fine. That doesn't necessarily mean that the AI model is more or less secure than a different location of the server. So I think there's quite some uncertainty and confusion when it comes to the whole security thing when using AI models. And I think we actually still have some work to do to break down what is important and what is less important when leveraging AI models. So this is an important topic, quite some confusion, and some clarifications are in place there.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Jourik, for this excellent presentation. And
my pleasure. Thank you very much.